Who Dey? What's going on? It's your boy Ace Boogie. Checking in with y'all real quick. Just waiting to see which followers are going to come through. Come chat it up. We were supposed to have Zim tonight. He had something come up, but I wanted to jump on here real quick. See if I could go live. See what you guys talking about on here. Obviously, there's a couple things. Tyler Boyd extension was done yesterday. 4 years, $43 million. Also, stuff around the league. Mason Foster, another guy that was actually released by the Redskins, linebacker. A big target possibly for the Bengals. You talk about Mason Foster being out there. I think with the Bengals, I think that they would have to possibly sign AJ to an extension first or something like that before something with Mason Foster will actually happen. But I'll stick around here for a little second, see who else is coming through. What's up, Funk? What's up, Funk? So I think that Mason Foster could be a good person to sign, especially with him getting cut right before training camp or right as we approach training camp. Him being out there on the market, that will be a good guy to add to this team. You talk about a linebacking core that's still pretty weak. You talk about guys like Jermaine Pratt. Guys like Preston Brown, Mason Foster. I think if you sign a guy like him, I think that he's actually better than what you have right now. So Mason Foster, I think, is a guy that the Bengals definitely need to look at. I think the AJ, like I told you guys, my source was correct. They wanted to get the Tyler Boyd deal done first before AJ's. As soon as they get that done and completed, I think we'll start to see the AJ thing move. They already had, like I told you guys before, the AJ contract was already in writing, at least the initial offer was. So they wanted to get Tyler Boyd done. He's done now. We have until Saturday. I would expect them to possibly get a deal done with AJ before Saturday. But after that, I think that's when you'll see if they're going to entertain the Mason Foster thing. Now, with him being cut, that means that a couple of guys can claim him. I'm not sure who will be the team that claims Mason Foster. Obviously, I think if you add him to this team, he's an upgrade across the board no matter where you play him at, whether you want to play him on the inside, outside. I think he was the Redskins' leading tackler for a number of years, had over 100 tackles last year, lost some weight. So he did just turn 30, but I still think that he's a guy that could be very productive, especially in the Bengals defense, especially when you talk about what we have at linebacker right now. What do you guys think? JoJo, do you think that we need to go out and sign Mason Foster? He's one of the number one trending topics right now in the Bengals community, even over Tyler Boyd right now. So I think that the Bengals should definitely see what they can do, see what money they have left over. Obviously, they just cut Clint Bowling. I'm not sure exactly how much of that money is going to go towards Tyler Boyd. I don't know if there's extra money. Obviously, the Bengals entertained trying to sign Gerald McCoy. You also had Mike Edwards cut from Green Bay. That's another guy. For me personally, though, if I'm comparing the two, I would probably go with the linebacker signing Mason Foster over signing a guy like Mike Edwards, in my opinion. And even though Mike Edwards is a great player, I just think that we need more help at linebacker, like Ray Day is saying. The linebackers scare me too, bro. The linebackers definitely scare me. So you talk about guys out there like Muhammad Wilkerson. Those are guys that are pieces that could help this Bengals defense. And if you can get them for a low price, I think, with camp being going on right now for most teams, those guys just want to be in a camp. So why not just throw something at a $2 million offer, $3 million offer at Mason Foster just to see what he can do? Now, Mike Edwards, from what I've been hearing and what I've been reading, like you guys on Twitter, it seems like he wants to play for a contender. And this is where that media narrative of the Bengals not being a contender tends to hurt us. Because if you have a team or a player that is looking at the Bengals and he's just constantly looking at ESPN and what's on the media and what the narrative is, he's looking at the power rankings, he's seeing the Bengals get ranked 29th and 30th. Peter King's ranking as second to last. It honestly, to me, is ridiculous because this team is extremely talented. I'm not trying to be a homer. I'm not trying to big up or overrate the Bengals. You look at this team, you got guys like Joe Mixon, you got guys like A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, John Ross, Tyler Eifert, Giovanni Bernard. Our second-string running back could start on several teams. You look at the defensive side of the ball with Jesse Bates. You look at William Jackson III, and I just start to scratch my head. But that media narrative kills us, man, because a lot of these players see that and they don't know anything about the Bengals. All they hear is that Mike Brown is cheap. We don't pay players. And that couldn't be anything further from the truth. Me and Zim were actually having a conversation earlier where we talked about things that the Bengals do that other organizations wouldn't do. And you talk about the deals that we had last year for Geno and Dunlap. Those are guys that are entering into their 30s. Other teams around the NFL would have probably cut them. They wouldn't have given them as big of deals as they did. And you saw what the Bengals did last year when they extended those guys. You talk about Pac-Man Jones. This guy was like 32, probably 32 when he got signed to an extension. Most teams wouldn't do that. So, as we have seen, Tyler Boyd got paid. The Bengals invest in guys that they basically invest in their own. That's what they do. There hasn't been anything that's changed. And I think some of the outside guys need to see what's going on here. You look at Zach Taylor. You look at the plans that he's laid. You look at the way that the system has changed. One of the main issues of this team has been Marvin Lewis and the coaching. It's been inconsistent. It's been to the point where players have underperformed, not because of their own abilities, but because of the situations that coaches put them in. Look at John Ross. He's been misused his entire career. So there's things like that happen. And before we found Tyler Eifert, we could never use a tight end. There's things like that's happened and have changed with new facilities, new coaching staffs, new priorities being set, game managers, big attention to detail. And I think that it all bodes well for the Bengals doing a lot better than people think. I'm not going to say we're Super Bowl contenders, but we're not that far from it. Honestly, like if they were to get a couple of more players, if you were to sign a Muhammad Wilkerson, a Mason Foster, one of those guys like that, they would easily be able to be Super Bowl contenders. That's how talented the team is. The coaching has held this thing back. So for me, that's what it really is. I hate that narrative that the media has about us. I hate looking at these power rankings and seeing the Bills ranked 11 spots ahead of us. I try not to be the power rankings guy because they don't mean anything, but it's just crazy levels of disrespect. I'm seeing projected records of 3-13 and things of that nature, and that's just not cool. TP definitely got paid. I think it was a fair contract. You look at Sterling Shepard, it's right around that area. I think that was a good deal for both sides. And, our worst nightmare would have been Tyler Boyd leaving us next year and going to the Steelers. That would have been horrible. So I think that Tyler Boyd definitely deserved to get paid. He was clearly our number 2 option. Even when A.J. Green went down, he was a guy that was reliable last year. He had 1,000 yards receiving, so why not bring him back? Function says all we need to do is get someone to help Vigil hold it down. I agree. I think Vigil and Preston Brown, if we can go and get Mason Foster, man, I'm all about that. Like, why not just kick the tires on this guy, see what we've got? We've got to shore up the linebacker position because you have to think about it. This is a long season. Guys are going to get hurt, and when we get hurt, that depth is going to be exposed there. So definitely got to make sure that everything is going to be kosher there. But I didn't want to leave you guys hanging. If you had any questions or anything that you wanted to ask me, I appreciate you guys kicking it with me. Be sure to ask me any questions. Like I said, initially Zim was going to be on here with me tonight. Maybe we'll probably try to do this another night or something like that. But I still wanted to get you guys' thoughts heard and answer any questions that you might have. They don't realize before injuries that we're rolling pretty good. Yeah, I agree. I was definitely worried about him going to Pittsburgh. He's from Pittsburgh. He's a Pittsburgh guy. that would be a worst nightmare for us. Him with Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, no, we couldn't let that happen. So, congrats to Tyler Boyd. This guy is extremely humble. If you watch the interview, extremely classy guy, all about his family. This is a guy that grew up in a situation where his house was burned to the ground. They didn't have anywhere to stay. He played multiple sports in Clareton just to help them win. I believe it was like a sport that he played. I think it was either baseball or basketball. He literally joined the team just to help them play. How do I think we start the season, JoJo? I think that we actually get off to a hot start. You look at how the season starts up. You talk about that Seattle game. I kind of had that as a loss. But honestly, with Jerron Reed getting hurt, that could be an X factor in that game in terms of how effective their defense is, because they lost a guy on the defensive line. I believe it was a defensive end that they traded to the Chiefs. Jerron Reed was probably their best guy. So what does that do? And what does that mean in terms of their rush defense? What does it mean in terms of their defensive line? We all know the game is won in the trenches. That could turn into a win. You talk about week 2, San Francisco game. I will be at that game. I think that the Bengals can win that game. You talk about some of the games that kind of start off after that, and I think that they're games that the Bengals could win. We could easily end up being 4-1 like we started off the season last year. We just have to stay healthy. We have to stay consistent, and we have to treat every game like it's our last, because the AFC North, my friend, is going to be tough next year. That's the hardest part. It's not the fact that our schedule is so tough. It's the fact that our division is so good, because we've been kicking the Browns down for years. Now they're ready to step up to the forefront. Then we also have the Ravens, who are coming on their second year with Lamar Jackson. Then you have the Steelers, who are going to be the Steelers. I personally think they take a step back, but they're still the Steelers, so they're not going to be a team that's going to go 3-13 or anything like that. So we don't have any cupcake competition this year, and so I think that that's going to be the hardest thing, is can we compete in this division and stick with everybody and keep up with everybody while this division is going. We hopped out and took a decent lead last year, but then we kind of dismantled towards the end of the season. Let me check some of these comments. I hate when people say our defense is bad, but don't talk about all our injuries. I definitely agree, Yimmers, because the defense has talent. Like last year, I think a lot of that had to do with coaching. You look at Terrell Austin and some of the situations that they were in. To give up 1,000 yards was just ridiculous, and that defense was too good for it. You talk about Sean Williams, who I personally haven't been as big of a fan of, but he definitely opened my eyes last year. He had a great season last year. Jesse Bates had a great season. So there's guys out there like Geno Atkins that can definitely make this defense a top 15 defense. I definitely agree with that. You talk about the Sam Hubbards, the Carl Lawsons. Those were guys that were lost to injury. The Bengals lost a ton of guys to injury last year, and it just seems like the media just can't tell, or I don't know what they're thinking. They just think that apparently all these talented guys that we had are gone now. I don't know what's going on. Who's my sleeper player who would break out this year for us? I feel like Auden Tate will have a big impact in Zach Taylor's offense. I'm going to wow some of you guys, and I'm going to say that the sleeper that's going to break out this year is going to be John Ross. And I think that in this system, it just bodes well for him. He's been playing for a coaching staff that didn't know how to use him. I think he's going to be the guy. I mean, I could say Joe Mixon, but technically Joe Mixon broke out last year, so I don't think it's Joe this year. I think it's going to be John Ross this year. If I had to look at someone on the defense, I would probably say Jesse Bates had a great year last year, so I can't really say Jesse Bates. I'm going to go with Sam Hubbard. I think Sam Hubbard is going to surprise a lot of people next year. I think him having more snaps next year will bode well for him with Michael Johnson being gone. I think the lack of competition with the guy that they signed, Gary Wynn or whatever his name is from the Giants, I don't think that guy's going to be a threat. Plus, Carl Lawson will be coming back hopefully by the first game, but if not, that means that Hubbard will have a lot more opportunities. So I am excited to see him and see what happens. Also, another guy to pay attention to is B.W. Webb. I think that he's another sleeper flying under the radar. He was a free agent corner that we signed. He's played in Lou Anarumo's system before. Zach Taylor has talked about him showing up in camp, making flashing plays. So stay tuned on him too as well. Let's see. I remember my cousins who was a Lion fan warned me about Austin, and now I know why. That's very true. If Coach Taylor can inject some magic into Andy like 2015, watch out. I totally agree. Yes, John Ross, definitely. I think he's going to have a big year. Andy is definitely going to have I think he's going to have a breakout year as well because he's going into a contract year, so you can never underestimate that. He's in a new system with all of these quarterback whisperers around him and in his ear, so that should bode well for him. I'm pumped with the John Miller signing. What's my opinion on that? I think it was a great signing. John Miller, from what I've heard, similar to what you guys have heard, I'm a fan. I never claimed to be, an insider or anything like that. I might get inside information, but that's different. I like the John Miller signing. I've seen a lot from our new offensive line coach talking about him, how smart he is. Obviously, he's replacing Alex Redmond, so anybody over Alex Redmond would have been an upgrade. I mean, no shot at him. I just don't think that he was ready to step into a starting role last year. You're talking about this guy being an undrafted free agent a couple of years ago. So I think that John Miller was a great signing. But hey guys, I got to get ready to get out of here. I'm glad you guys stayed tuned. We will be back, me and Zim, my co-host. We will come back here, make sure that we go live with you guys, answer some questions, and we will be posting this on YouTube. So if you don't follow my YouTube, it's New Stripe City on YouTube. So follow me there. You find most